Hello, Star Wars Unlimited fans. So we are back with the TTI League and a Top Cut game. Today it will be the Season 16 Round 2 game between Jarol and Uncle Rico. Jarol will be on Krennic ECL and Jarol and Uncle Rico will be on Han2 Blue. So very much a deck of the hour. And Jarol is giving it his take for green-blue villainy. I give a quick look at the bracket with you where we stand. No bracket this time actually. Then I'll move into deck lists and then we'll head into the game. So also it has been a while. Good to be back. Good to have you here. Today we'll be doing a recording. This won't be a live stream. And Rebel Traitor will upload this later onto the server. You know me as Wayu. So looking onto what used to be with the bracket. This time we have a round robin for the season 16 top cut. We have just four players in the top cut. That's because we didn't have as many players in the league as last month, which is always the qualification for the top cut in the following month, as we used to have before. And in order to keep it competitive, we are then choosing hang on 1 second. I just need to take a break with the players here. Players are already starting. Um, okay, I'm just asking the players to pause for a sec. So this will be fun in the recording. Anyway, so going back to the talk. So four players in the top cut round robin system for that. So everybody plays everybody. And we already had round number one. Let me talk 1 more second about why we have a top four cut only and a round robin coming out of that. So we didn't have as many players as I said. And what I want to say with that is essentially, so we want to keep it competitive. That's why we only have four players in the top cut this month. However, I'd love for us to go back to the top 8 and top 16 cut and so on that we had in the past. And so for that, we need you. So feel free to sign up for the league. Everybody is welcome to join. It's free. You can play on TTS or on Petranaki. By now, people are fairly, equally happy to play on either platform. It all works via the Discord server. The Discord server will be in the description of this video. You can just join the server and take it from there. And we'd be really happy to see you. And now on to this match. We are now on this round robin. Everybody plays everybody. We have already done round number one. That's what you see on the screen here. So in game number one, Jarol beat Mini Captain 2-0. And in game number two, I managed to beat and eke out a win against Rico 2-1. And so that was a close one. And actually, we are both on Han2 Blue this top cut. Jarol is on Krennic ECL, as you already know, and Mini Captain is on Quinlan Tarkentown. All, of course, the new and fresh Set 5 meta, which is, I believe, an exciting time to be playing in this with the GC lined up and coming up so shortly. And so today, round number two, we'll be doing the first game of round number two, the first matchup, and that is game number four on this chart here. So Jarol taking on Uncle Rico, as I said earlier, with the two respective decks. And then game number three, where Mini Captain and me play it out, we will do on Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday. It should be a live stream. And the timing should be, I believe, 3 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central European summertime. All right. And so then essentially, after round number three, there will be a finals played out between the two best players across all three rounds. So let's get into lists here. First, we'll look at Uncle Rico's Hunter Blue. So, not lots of new cards in this deck from set five. It's a force deck. I will not get into the details here. You've probably already heard here and there about the deck. I just call out a few specifics that are of notice to me, especially as I've also been playing this deck quite a lot over the last weeks. And again, I'm also actually running this deck in the top cut, in this TTI top cut this month myself. So and Uncle Rico and me, we have some differences in our lists. And so let me just point out some. So Uncle Rico decided to play Yaddle as a two drop, whereas others often don't in this deck. And he let forgo of, the early hitters big bombs, as in the Phantom, which already used to be here before set five, and especially and most noteworthy Octobocto, which is a card I absolutely love, and which is also a card that I think is really, really good into the blue-green villainy matchup because it allows you to take out Dr. Pershing turn two if you have an Octo turn one. So Uncle Rico, however, is not running that, deciding to go some other routes. He still runs three Ezra, two Grogu. I will not go through to the list in detail, as I said. So he has quite some force activation, which should come out early. So I think he's good with that. What I find noteworthy is, for one, well, maybe worth calling out is also just two itinerant warriors and also two Kanan Jarrus. So the good old Kanan that we've known, I think he's from Spark, and that I've seen only very few Han2 Blue players play over the last few weeks in the set five meta. So that's one. Then it's noteworthy that he plays five removals, two fells, two shatter points, and one takedown. Others play a little less. And then he's also running the new Anakin, which, Han2 Blue players have been on and off about. And so let's see how that plays out for Uncle Rico here. And then his top end is no Chewbacca, however, a Mace Windu, the good old Mace from Spark as well. Um, I'll talk about sideboards after game one. So getting into Jarol's list, I think so. Jarol decided to give Krennic a go, which I think is a great decision because I love the Krennic leader from Spark myself. Um, People often thought he's not as good as Kira. Over the last sets, I believe that was probably true. That's why we saw so little Krennic. However, Kira has a lot of counters in this new meta, and thus, especially her flip turn is not as powerful often anymore because there's now many more ways for opponents to directly answer and thus counter the flip turn, and thus I think a little bit, the question currently is which is the best leader for green blue villainy deck. There's many options: Gar Saxon, the new Kylo, Kira still around as well, Krennic, maybe even others. So Jarol has decided to give Krennic a go. And the deck by itself is, I would say, fairly classic. One thing that Krennic suffered from wasn't only the strong flip turn of Kira that often, makes it possible for the player to shift balance, but also the strong Tarkin Town meta, because Krennic got this Royal Guard Attaché, I think, in Twilight, and it usually comes out as a well, it always comes out as a 2/3, right? And thus it's just too easily counterable by a Tarkin Town. However, not as much Tarkin Town in the current meta, and thus this is one route where this might be worthwhile thing to do. And then I just do a few call outs. He plays three Long Pike, so this is ECL, different than Data Vault, obviously. Um, three Long Pikes. I absolutely love that unit in Green Blue Villainy ECL. So that's I think a great decision. And then just one Gideon Hask. However, I think Jarol's tech is to go with the two Corvus instead of some more Hasks maybe or other options. Some people still even play Steadfast Battalion, which is a card I love to see, especially in Krennic. However, Jarol on the Corvus with two restore, so he decides he needs a little more restore there. And then obviously the elephant in the room is the new Vader, right? So Darth Vader from set five, an amazing card, which, almost always trades 2 for 1 and often even goes 3 for 1. So the other cards, he does play one SLB main, and the other cards, I think, is mostly what you expect. So then, finally, let's get the stream started. I'll give the players the go ahead. The players already did start. I think we are at the end of turn one. Then I was able to pause them. So we're also trying a new mod here. Just one more word on that. We're trying a new mod, which is kind of a fusion, I would say, between the classic mod that we always used to use and a new and a newer, much fancier mod. So this is kind of the in between. I would love your feedback on this. I will continue to use the angled view. I used the top-down view in the past. Please also give me your feedback on that. And do would you prefer the top-down view, which I think kind of gives you more of an equal view onto both sides of the game, onto both players, or the angled view? In the past, I got some feedback when I used the top-down view that you would prefer the angled view. I do that for today. Please let me know if you want me to go back to the top-down view. All right, I'll finally give the go-ahead to the players. And off we go. Let me also just set the camera right here, that you see both hands equally well. And so what just happened? Um, who has initiative? UncleRico has initiative, and so I believe he also won the die roll, and thus he started with red 5, damaged with Han Solo, which is really not what you want to do. And probably he took a mulligan, and then he didn't have a better turn 1 play. And Jarol answered that with the Dr. Pershing, which is kind of his best opening play, I believe, especially, well, not only into this matchup, but also into this matchup. However, Jarol doesn't have a ramp, and he just used Pershing to actually draw a 3 cost in power, but he decides not to play that and goes for the Inferno instead. So UncleRico in the meantime played the Jedi in hiding at no without the Han effect, and it's hidden, which doesn't make a difference here in this turn, but it will allow UncleRico to gain the Force next turn. Okay, and into turn number 3. Initiative lies with, actually move that over a bit so you see the initiative token here to the right. So initiative lies with UncleRico, who went 3 to base already. Then Jaro decides to run his Inferno 4 into the red 5, which surely makes sense. He gets to, look through these 2 top cards of his deck again. And red 5 won't be able to do 2 damage to Pershing. Interesting that Rico goes to base here instead of damaging the Pershing. In my experience, the Pershing is what you want to get rid of as quickly as possible. However, Jarl doesn't have a great turn 3 play, nothing for 4 resources, where Uncle Rico now did one of the beauties of set 5, and Jarl continues to not have a great turn 3 play. So he has to play a power. And okay, there's too many things happening. So Uncle Rico was able to get the Ki Adi Mundi out. The Force he had generated with Jedi in hiding before, so he was able to draw 2 cards. Amazing new card. I agree with many others that this is it's probably one of the 3 best cards in the new set, if not the best card. And then Jaro playing the power, and so UncleRico used the Force for that. Jaro using the power forced UncleRico to discard 1 card, and he decided to go against the Jedi in hiding, because it wouldn't have allowed him to use the when defeated effect, for which he needs the Force, and discard also is really strong against blue-green villainy. So probably he wanted to keep that alive in order to have the option in the future. And on to turn 4. And people players already traded. Uncle Rico traded the Jedi in hiding into the Pershing, which makes a lot of sense. So Pershing was able to draw 2 cards, right? Yes. Okay. And here we go with the Force. Oh. And Jarol decides against ECLing. So ECLing, Gideon Hask there would also have been an option, but Jarol, of course, wants to keep it for the set 5 Vader. In the past, you often, the 5 resource turn was the turn to use ECL, right? For blue-green villainy ECL. And that now shifted a bit. That's probably also a reason why Jarol said he will, go with Corvus more than with Gideon Hask. Okay. And so now Jarol claims, so I think the one move I missed is that Uncle Rico must have force thrown himself to take out the Krennic. I'll just be so free to look at the discard here. Yeah, he force threw a Luke onto himself. So he force threw onto himself, used a Luke to get rid of the Krennic. The Krennic is something you want to get rid of. And so now Jarol clears the Jedi in hiding. This time Uncle Rico does have the Force, and thus he can use the innate when defeated ability, which is use the Force, and then the opponent chooses a card from his hand to discard. And Jarol chooses the no good, no glory only results, which also a great removal effect. And now we are in the 1-for-1 game, very much. So Han2 Blue has the reputation of playing often only one unit, one card a turn, and then that makes it traditionally fairly easy for Blue Green Villainy to remove that card. Um, let's see how Uncle Rico takes this forward. And so now he will only have, yeah, especially if he resources the Yoda, he will only have a one play, but he decides to keep his options open. Yoda also is a great card in this matchup because it gives you instant value. Even if it gets removed immediately, you draw a card. But Jarol plays also, so this is the game of the strong cards. Plays one of the formerly strongest cards, and Jarol picking up the Death Trooper here allows him to one-shot the Han. And Uncle Rico will still be able to play Luke because he's at 7, even though Han's ability isn't available for him anymore this action phase. But Jarol has, quite the answers in his hand at the moment. Uncle Rico, unbeknowingly, really wants to keep the Fel for the Devastator. Let's see how this plays out. I think, yeah, he uses the Fel for the Vader, which obviously is also a great target. So you might be wondering, why is the Death Trooper able to take out Yoda? It's because of Krennic's innate ability that damaged units get +1/+0, right? Which is the great ability next to his restore of the leader. Um, and okay, this is interesting. So Uncle Rico will sure be thinking here about claiming because he could use Grogu to just get 2 damage onto Snoke. However, on the other hand, Poe also one-shots Snoke when Uncle Rico decides to discard a card from hand here to do 2 damage onto Snoke. So yeah, I think that's good place there. But now obviously the new Vader comes out in all its glory. He's gonna put his shield onto one of the 2 units, it doesn't matter which. Removes that by attacking and then runs into the other one and loses his shield. He should be. Should he not? What am I missing? Ah. The Grogu had 0 points in strength. So obviously he runs the Darth Vader into the Grogu. Because of Snoke, he had 0 attack value, and thus Vader doesn't take a hit back. So this is what I meant earlier. So in this play, Vader might even be able to go 4-for-1. And the question here is, would I have gone on in Uncle Rico's place to take out the Vader or the Snoke? So the Snoke was not damaged, and thus it is a major problem, of course. Um, however, the Vader also is. And Uncle Rico just decides that the Snoke is a bigger problem. But now Jarol's at 10 already, and he just dominates the board here with a Devastator and takes out the Luke. So Uncle Rico plays the Anakin onto the board and the ability onto Vader. So Vader's a 2/3 now, and I thought he would be wanting to set up a force throw, and he decides to force throw Jarol here instead of himself, and Jarol has the Pershing, and thus doesn't take as much damage. I think Jarol just drew. Oh no, no, that's wrong. He did already play a ramp earlier, I believe, right? The resupply is not his first. Well, again, look into discard. I think that's what's not distracting players too much. No, I'm right. It was his first ramp card here now. Resupply in turn number 10, I think. Wow. Yeah, so now this board state looks really good for Jarol. Uncle Rico is kind of out of options. He wanted to get the force here, so that's why he chose to attack with Anakin first, in order to either get Ki-Adi-Mundi or Mace Windu's force effect. Jarol has all the options here. Can take out, well, Anakin already attacked, so taking out the Anakin with no glory is not as attractive anymore. Yeah, I think Jarol has the luxury of just dropping units onto the board now. Corvus obviously, will make this even a much safer win for him here, essentially. I think Uncle Rico is already thinking about scooping. Plates of our throw onto Jarol, 3 damage onto something. He wanted the Vader damaged, and thus he can play the Mace Windu. The good old OG Mace Windu from Spark. Uncle Rico needs to decide where the 3 damage go. If he puts it on Vader, probably Vader will just attack, of course. Uncle Rico decides, weakening the restore card is more important. He can now play the new Mace Windu from set 5 and put 4 damage onto the Corvus and thus kill the Corvus, right? So let's see. If Jarol now decides to play a card rather than attacking base, ooh, he damages the Vader. That will be a welcome invitation for Uncle Rico to play the OG Mace Windu, as I just mentioned. Oh, he can play the new Mace and also take out Vader. That's what he does, keeping his options open. He could have used the old Mace to take out both cards, right? The new Vader as well as the Death Trooper. But the Death Trooper is no particular threat at the moment. Just a 3/3. The threat looms in the air. And so Uncle Rico eats another 10 from Devastator. Corvus would do 4, and the Death Trooper would seal the game if not removed now. And Uncle Rico also has lethal on the table, and thus decides to go for that. However, Jarol has the heal. Jarol just drew into the SLB. Wow, that's crazy. Wow, he decides to go for Vader? That's a risky play. But none of Uncle Rico's units will now one-shot Jarol. So I mentioned that risky because I thought he would bank onto drawing into a Sentinel there. And I think he's running Pike Sentinels and no other than Sentinels, if I remember that correctly, on the ground, right? Um, yeah, but that's not his problem. So he can eat another five, he decides. He does have the SLB, and he has very much lethal himself, right? So there's probably nothing Uncle Rico can do now. Plays this valiantly towards the end. The two restore from Corvus now win Jarol the game. But I think what is interesting here. So always think about what was the key play in a game, and in this game now, I think Blue Green Villainy Jarol just outvalued um, Han2 Blue, and so here we go, game one in the books. We'll quickly look at sideboards, and with Uncle Rico, I think it's easy. So if I was in his shoes, I would just side in Chamsindula and the Crate Dragon. Four cards in. No, the Pillages, of course, are a really good option, really good choice against Blue Green Villainy as well. So maybe you want to find room for these six cards. I would, the question is, what does he take out? He might take out Grogu, for example. Mm, there's other options. Let's see whether he decides to take out some more early drops. Probably not. So then maybe something around his mid-range units. And for Jarol, so Jarol plays restock, plays top target. Would he get and take in top target against this deck? I'm not sure. So he's playing a really interesting sideboard card here from set 5, Disruptive Burst. You might have noticed he's not playing any of these -2/-2 um, events or upgrades, Period Position, make an opening that used to be, stock for Blue Green Villainy for so long. And Disruptive Burst is the closest thing that Set 5 produced. And I'll just jump back into the stream now because I want to give you guys the opportunity to see what people resource. And so Jarol, there we already see a sideboarded card. I thought that he brings in the Emperor's, the Palpatine's Return. He did. His one on hand. Um, he drew into three Inferno Fours and keeps that hand. Well, Inferno Four gives him the opportunity to further, get closer to his ramp, right? And so that's probably why he decided to do that. But if I was in Jarrell's place, I don't, I'm not a blue green villainy player that much. Of course, I gave it my fair share, but Jarrell knows this better than me for sure. Um, I would have probably taken the mulligan. Jarrell didn't and decides to draw into the power. The initiative, however, is with Uncle Rico, and thus Uncle Rico will be able to produce his force token. So interesting choices there. Now Jarul can think, will you play the pike? Will you play the power? The pike would actually, not die to either of these two units of Uncle Rico, and thus he might think about the pike. There we go. And he probably doesn't want to give the card draw from Yoda to Uncle Rico. And Jarul, little similar to last game, doesn't draw into a great turn 4 play. He has no ramp, so best he can do now is play the power. Uncle Rico has some options. I think he puts a Poe down now. He does have removal. That won't happen this phase just yet, so he will surely play the Itinerant Warrior and runs into the Pike with the Yoda. Heals 2 from Inferno. The Force will stay with him. And Jarrell really decides to give a card draw to Uncle Rico. So picks up another Yoda. There we go. Right. Uncle Rico decides not to attack first, get value out of the Jarol, but drop the itinerant warrior, and thus he's able to claim initiative. He would have been, otherwise Jarol might have thought about attacking with the Inferno in order to get initiative. But here we go now. So Jarol only has a overwhelming barrage. Maybe he has a long pike in his resources. I didn't pay attention to that. I will not look across resources now because that would give players a hint onto what I'm thinking about at least. So I don't want to do that. Um, so Jarol either can play a long pike from his resources, or he'll just play a four hit overwhelming barrage, either onto his leader or onto the Inferno 4. Probably onto his leader in that case. But this gives Uncle Rico quite the options here. And Uncle Rico says, just as last game, it's worth his 7-drop and a force throw to kill the Krennic. Jarl did have the long pike. Okay, that's good for him. Uncle Rico goes to base here, decides it's time to get in some base damage. And of course, there's another Yoda. So Uncle Rico's hand doesn't look as strong right now, but if his cards didn't show up yet, they just might be around the corner. And I think this board state and the hands, it's fairly open now. Let's see what players do. So Jarol might decide it's now the time for the ECL Vader move because he can take out 2 units with that. And the itinerant warrior is still around as well. He doesn't even need to give that a shield in order to take it out with the Vader ability. And he can give another shield to another unit should he choose to. He doesn't with Elon Pike, which is another nice twist in terms of synergy with the new Vader, right? The powerhouse of set 5. But Jarol decides there's enough shields already on the board, and now Uncle Rico probably will play a removal this turn and a force throw. He does have 2 force units out. So Vader, Jarol could have ambushed the Vader into the Yoda here and take out the itinerant warrior, and thus would have taken the opportunity from. That's what he'll do now, probably. Let's see which 2 units he takes out. Will he go for the leader or will he go for the itinerant? Yeah, okay. So he leaves Uncle Rico the option to play a force throw. The Vader doesn't take damage back. So this card is amazing. You guys all already know what his abilities are, I'm sure. Um, yeah, all right. But Uncle Rico has a direct answer. Uncle Rico can't do much more. So that was actually a good way for Uncle Rico to answer this. And he decides to not play his force throw, keep it for later, which might prove a good choice. Jarol with the initiative now. So probably Uncle Rico would have preferred to draw into something else here than just 2 Anakins playing. Jarol can either play a Vader from his discard via Palpatine's return or a barrage. He goes for a barrage to take out the Yoda and gives Uncle Rico another card draw. Wow. 3 Anakins in a row. Uncle Rico decides that can mean only one thing. It's not invasion, it's play Anakin. So the Inferno 4 is now -3/-3. However, it's buffed currently with the barrage, and thus it will not die. Besides, it's now time for a force throw. UncleRico is running a little out of options. And so if I were him, I would probably take out the Royal Guard Attaché. That's what he does. And so Jarol will just claim. Yes. And into the next turn here. So by the way, if that's not clear, so the Inferno 4 was buffed through the barrage, was basically a 4/5, given -3/-3 by Anakin, thus at 0-2. And the two effects that are on the unit disappear at the same point in time. And thus the Inferno is not that the overwhelming barrage buff would go away first and then the Inferno 4 would die. They disappear at the same time, and that's why the unit doesn't die. So it's back as a 2/3. Jarol also doesn't draw into new options here. So, playing a Vader from hand, playing a Vader from discard, it's kind of all the same. He doesn't seem to have a timely intervention in his resources. Otherwise, I'm sure he would be playing that. Is he playing timely interventions? I'm going to take a quick look between games 2 and 3. Should we have a game 3? And now UncleRico gets his value game going. Plays a Kiadi with the Force, draws 2 cards, and now has more options at his hands. So now this looks not bad for UncleRico. He might even think about, playing more than one unit this turn, because that gives blue-green villainy more trouble to remove. Let's see. Jarol drew into a power, and I think the Hask. He decides to play another barrage. Take out the shield on the Anakin and the Kiadi. So UncleRico just gets Jarol to 4 remaining HP on base here. Wow. This is a hot game. This gives Jarol the opportunity to look through his top 2 cards, pick the best answer for that Luke, otherwise he would die. If there's none, probably would put both cards to bottom and claim. So he claims, and so I believe that one card that he left on top is an answer, and there we go. It's a removal, and thus we are not done just yet. But this does look good for UncleRico now. So we might be going into game 3. And it might very well be the case that Jarol doesn't play timely because he's on ECL. I think there's players that do both, that do either. I've seen like blue-green villainy ECL players that run timely and others that don't. I haven't seen a timely yet in these 2 games. So that's why I'm thinking he might not. And so Jarol decides to go the beta play here from game 1 that I also mentioned. Not take the safe route and remove Luke, but go a little bit more risky. And this should be game then. Yes. So we go into game 3. I'll do a quick run into deck lists again. Deck list by Jarol here, no timely intervention. Interesting. Let's quickly go back into the games. So players are not sideboarding again. On to game 3. This time initiative with Jarol. UncleRico resources a Cassian Endor. That's often an easy resource. Jarol draws into his ramp. First time. He thinks he has 2 ramp cards. I oversaw the SLT. And so even decides to put down one ramp card. He knows that obviously we are very much in a ground-based in a ground-based meta here, and so he feels safe enough to keep the SLT and doesn't need to play the resupply because he should surely be able in turn three, if he now plays the SLT, to turn the SLT into a resource, and he might even have some added benefit from it. So that's one of the advantages when you run open deck lists, as we do in the TTI top card, right? And that's, by the way, only in the top card. If you participate in the normal league, there's no open deck lists. There's actually not even uh, anything such as that you're forced to play one list all a month or something. You can change for every game. In the top card, that's not the case. One list for the whole top card that you participate in, and it's open. And so Jarol knows what answers Han2 Blue, what answers Uncle Rico here especially has, and thus goes with the SLT. So while I talk, players take actions, and traded a blow with the Royal Guard attaché into Yaddle. Yaddle gave the force to Uncle Rico. Jarol plays the expected SLT, and Uncle Rico follows up with the Itinerant Warrior that he can play for 3 as a 4/2 shielded with Han, which is amazing value as well. And here's the play. He does play the Key Adi as a 4/2. I think he was hoping to draw into force throw in order to, keep his option. If he does draw into force throw with Kiadi, that he can still use it this action phase. Jarol, however, decides to answer with his Royal Guard attaché, and the Yardle was taken out earlier by the SLT, right? So Jarol is now ahead. I haven't seen the Cham Syndulla yet in Uncle Rico's uh, deck, neither in game two, so he might have not cited this in. Interesting. Jarol decides it's time to get the restore out, and now he has 2 units out that each restore 2. So it's probably something that Uncle Rico doesn't want to see. So Krennic becomes a 3/3 here with his own effect of gaining +1/+0 if damaged, but also takes a hit of 4 by going into the itinerant warrior. Oh, there's a Cham Syndulla. And yeah, interesting that Jarol goes with the Krennic into the Itinerant Warrior there. I would have probably gone to base. Again, Jarol is the better blue-green ability player than me, I'm sure. Jarol, if you listen to this, maybe shout me your reasoning for going with the Krennic into the Warrior. I'd be interested to hear, because then Uncle Rico wouldn't have been able to take it out with the Itinerant Warrior straight back, right? Um, so you of course took that into account, and so interested to hear what your thinking was there. So he did heal for 2, however, and with the Corvus already as well. Uncle Rico answers with a Cham as a 3 cost. I just look at this card here again. So Uncle Rico, yes, has his 3 units in this card for now. Oops. Jarl passes, puts down the Pershing, drew into nice options now. Uncle Rico thinking between Yoda and Jedi in hiding. Jedi in hiding really has value in this matchup, but Jarol has quite a big hand. I also didn't see the pillages yet, so not sure what Uncle Rico sideboarded here. He did sideboard the champs and dollars that we know now. He is also able to play the Luke now. Having a 5/2 on board is actually a great payoff from champs and dollar. But Jarol still has some restore going. Uncle Rico decides it's not time for Luke yet. Gets his own restore out. And Jarol now still has ECL open, can play Vader, can play either Vader. And in his Vader draw, he could take a Pike Sentinel. He decides against it, and for the SLT. Gets him closer to being able to play Devastator, right? Um, and ambushes the Yoda. And so now Uncle Rico could take out the Vader. He can also claim and just play Crate Dragon. Uncle Rico now has a great top end on hand. However, he doesn't have any removal for now. So he doesn't have an answer for Devastator as it stands. If he gets the crate out before the Devastator, um, that could prove huge for him. But Jarol has his answers for crate on hand, namely the new Vader, still ECL hasn't been used, as well as the No Glory. And so Uncle Rico decides it's time. Let's get out the crate as a 10-8, 4-8. Jarol will use one of his removals on the crate, I'm pretty sure. Um, Good for Uncle Rico is that he has another crate on hand, so it's time for the Vader. He decides. And now Jarl can can choose the sequence of actions. And so, of course, the crate effect, which triggers the active player always usually decides is the last thing. And so that's what happens here. He attacks into the Han. The Han still survives because it has 6 hit points, and Vader does only 5. The shield goes onto the crate. The shield goes onto the Vader, and then and the shield disappears through the 3 damage from Han Solo, right? And then Uncle Rico decides the 9 damage, no, the 6 damage from playing the Vader go onto the Vader, and thus the Vader's taken out. All right, now. So initiative with Uncle Rico. He could play the crate as a 10-10 now. Vader, Jarol again has a clean answer with now two no glories actually. That would just, you know, make him suffer 5 damage. He has restored 2 unit on board. So this isn't too bad. So Uncle Rico's in a tough spot here. He does have the force if he draws into one of his shatter points to take out the Devastator. Also, the reinforcement walker is also a problem, of course. Playing the itinerant warrior here probably is a wise choice because it allows Uncle Rico to avoid dying from the Devastator damage. Let's see what Jarol does here. Does he think it's time to play Devastator, or would he rather pick one of his other options? Actually, I think Mace Windu is probably a tempting target. He only has 7 damage on base. No, goes for the Walker. The Walker won't die to either of these 2 units from Uncle Rico, right? So that's why he might be thinking, inclined to do that. Picks up another Vader. Besides, doesn't need to heal with only 7 damage on board on his base. And UncleRico resources again. Jarol doesn't this time. Says he's happy with 10 resources. Mm, right. There's the 1 damage from Krennic. And so Jarol's already very close to lethal now. And this probably is it. Because I wouldn't know what Uncle Rico needs to draw into in order to be able to prevent getting hit from both units at the same time. Tough spot. Uncle Rico gives it a try, but does not drawn out here, I'm afraid. So that's game for Jarol. Congratulations. Well played, Jarol. Well played, Uncle Rico. Um, Yeah, Uncle Rico says he didn't draw into the removal. Wow. And it's not coming for the next 3 turns before it does. Um, so, wow. GG's to both players. So, actually, next week I will be playing Jarol, also with Han2 Blue. So, that I'm looking forward to. And until then, as I said, this Wednesday, you can watch again me versus Mini Captain on Quinlan Tarkentown. Also, should be an interesting game. Quinlan Tarkentown has a good matchup into Han2 Blue. And so for so long, I'll close with Rebel Traitor as usual and say, always remember to take the initiative.